So you didn't know that I hired a new virtual assistant, did you, Randy?
I did not know that.
She tells me when the recording is in process.
And I am looking on the internets, and I see something good now. So let's do that.
So, hey everybody, welcome to Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. For those who don't know, I would be the Teddy part, and the guy to my left or right of the guy is my Randy counterpart. Our special guest today is Vaishali Shah. Gonna be really good conversations. We'll tell you a little bit more about what we're going to talk about in a minute. But listen, you got to hang on to the end of the show, because at the end of the show, Randy's going to have a story that you've never heard before.
We will, huh?
Yeah, we will. I just told you to do that, didn't I?
Then we will. So it is written, so it shall be.
Hey, would you introduce yourself to our audience, buddy?
Absolutely. Randy Wooden with Goodwill Industries of Northwest North Carolina, broadcasting globally from the illustrious Man Cave, the East Wing of the Man Cave here in Clemens, North Carolina. So dodging raindrops today. But yeah, I run our professional center. And if you might be watching now, or maybe a recording of this, if you or maybe somebody you know is in a job hunt, you're a professional. However you want to define that, maybe by education or the fact that you're in a leadership role, just know that our services are free. If you're watching the show, again, we're happy to help. Just reach out to me. There's no cost to you at all, and we're happy to help. We've helped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people over the years, and continue to do so. And so that's me in a nutshell, Teddy, and I'll throw it back to you.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah. So for those who've never met me or heard about me, I'm about ready to freak you out because I do things a little different. Maybe not. So I'm a LinkedIn strategist, trainer, and coach. And what that means is I help people master using LinkedIn as a business tool. Absolutely appalling when I see some way some business professionals are using LinkedIn. And my mission in life is to help them do it better. And I do that through LinkedIn coaching, training, webinars, mastermind series, public webinars, and corporate training programs. And as I told Randy, a few different times. Sometimes I do this by implants. I have computer chips I can stick in people's heads. So, yeah,
dude, I don't know, man.
So our special guest today is Vaishali Shah. Vaishali has a business called Copper Seed. And by the way, I think you told me the story about the name. So when you introduce yourself, which I'm going to have you do in a minute, I'd love for you to just repeat how you came up with the name Copper Seed for your business. Vaishali is a money mentor, and she helps predominantly focuses on women, but she said she'd come help Teddy and Randy and I and our guest today. Predominantly focuses on the financial side of personal finances through lots of education and planning and coaching, but she's also done lots of conversations in this whole world of transitioning from the work world to what many call retirement. So the conversations today is going to be all about preparing to exit to the world of work. And again, our special guest is Vaishali Shah. Vaishali, I know I butchered introducing you. Would you do a better job at that for us and share with you the audience?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. And Randy and Teddy, thank you so much for having me on today. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Vaishali Shah. As Teddy said, my company is Copper Seed, and I help simplify personal finance for individuals and for business owners through education, planning, and coaching. So yeah, very excited to be here.
Hey, folks, if you're watching us, let us know what you're eating for lunch, for one, and also where you're watching us from. So we want to make sure we keep up to date on that. And I'll monitor the chat box. If you have a comment or question for Vaishali, then put it in there, and I'll try to work those in during our conversation. So if we're ready to get started, Teddy, I usually tee it up with the why question each week, and this is no exception. So there was something that prompted you to pursue what you're doing. You've not been doing this your entire life. There was something, a moment or a series of events that constitute your why. So what's your why? In terms of
my why? Yes. Yeah. So, and you know, Teddy, I neglected to answer your question about Copper Seed. So I'm going to throw that in real quick.
Okay.
So the name Copper Seed comes from basically growing your pennies. A copper penny seed. So that's the origin of the name. And that's essentially my passion, is helping people grow their financial life and create a life that they love using money as a tool. And so my why, in my first career, I was a teacher. I taught elementary school. Teaching is in my heart. And because of a life transition of my own in my 30s, I changed careers and entered the world of personal finance and worked for a trust company for 10 years. And last year, during the pandemic, decided I wanted to combine those two passions, teaching and personal finance, to help people understand how they could better use their money to create, a fulfilling life. So made that transition last year.
Wow. And that time of year to do anything, to launch a new business, that takes a lot of courage and a lot of faith and a lot of hard work. I'm sure it's been an eventful journey for you in the last year and a half. I got to just hats off to you, and I look forward to hearing your story. So let me throw it to Teddy. He's gonna drive today. Like I said, I'll monitor the chat box and throw in some questions that you may have. So Teddy, let's get started.
Before I get started, Don actually told us the street he lives on in High Point, and he has peel and eat shrimp. Don, don't eat it all. As soon as we're done with the show, we're heading down your way, buddy. Vaishali, good to have you on here. Thank you very much. So just we want to look at a couple different areas and aspects and perspectives of this whole world that lots of people call retirement. And I just don't like that word. For me, it's too finality. It's too deliberate. It's too much of a cut it off and stop. And so I hesitate using that word retirement myself, but you got to know whatever you call it, you got to know what it looks like. You got to figure out what is it that you want. Sometimes we refer to it as, when you and I were chatting about vision. So is there something that ideas you can share people as they think about this vision of what does retirement look like as they move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly right. I mean, really what we're doing is we are creating the reality that we love, right? So having that vision in mind is so important. And I would say that vision is a journey, right? So when you first start into your working world, and we'll come back to this a little bit more on the financial side as well when we talk about the countdown to retirement, but really that countdown starts when you start your first job as a young adult, right? So if you know what you are working towards, it's kind of like planning a trip, right? So when you plan a vacation, you know your destination before you figure out how to get there. And this is no different. So knowing what that vision is, it might be a little fuzzy when you're in your 20s and such. And as you go through life, that vision will change and adjust. And as you get closer to that retirement, it'll become better formed, but it allows you to make those decisions throughout your lifetime to get you to where you want to be in that stage.
Yeah, I often remind myself that somebody else taught me this, and I can't remember who did, but retirement is not ending something. It's starting something new. When you look at it from that context, it can be much more rewarding than I'm just going to quit. And I'm just going to stop. And I have a family member that I recently asked. He's 1 year away from retirement. I was like, "What are you going to do?" I don't know. I haven't thought about it. Mistake? I think I called him a fool, but anyway, you got to have a vision. You got to know where. Yeah. So
and then you can be intentional, right? The decisions you make along the way.
Yeah. Being intentional about that next step is going to be much more rewarding. So when Randy and I were talking about you being on the show, Randy said, "Man, I need to ask Vaishali what's the biggest mistake people make when they're planning their retirement or executing their retirement, because I don't want to make those mistakes." Would you help Randy and give him some insights on that?
Sure. And Randy, you actually mentioned, I think the number one mistake that people make is not planning, right? Like just putting it off. Retirement seems so far away, so I'm not going to think about it until my 40s or 50s. And then it's upon you. You have fewer years to prepare, et cetera. So that's one. I would say another one is, as you walk this journey, creating a balance between near-term planning and long-term planning, especially on the financial side, because, it works both ways. If you're young and, it's important to put a lot of money into your retirement savings and such, but there's a balance between how much you save now and how much you have in liquid assets, right? Because you want to live your life, and you want, you might have emergency expenses and such. So having that balance, there have been a number of people that I've worked with that, get into their 30s, they're ready to buy a house, but all their money's in their retirement savings. So, they don't have the liquid assets to meet those near-term goals. So creating that balance along the way. And then also that balance between saving for your kids' college education versus your retirement, right? So those are two big expenses. And it's really important to prioritize that retirement savings, because you can't, once you get to that point, you have limited assets to work with. So
what about the fear of the unknown? I mean, there are a lot of people out there who are paycheck to paycheck, or are within a paycheck or two of bad things happening, very bad things.
Absolutely.
And for them, and I have, whether friends or clients who say, I don't think I can ever retire. And I'm wondering, it's almost, and I'll make a comparison here. It is maybe not a fair one, but I'll go with it. I had prostate cancer years ago, and I've been open about that and talking publicly about it. And fortunately, I got checked up, on a regular basis. It ran in my family, so I was aware of it. But I've talked to so many people who are afraid of or embarrassed about learning that, oh no, I may have cancer. They don't want to go through the process. They're afraid of what they may find out. And so it's almost better not knowing. Is that a kind of a fair way to look at it? I don't think I can ever retire because, I don't have enough money to live the lifestyle of the rich and famous like Dr. Burris over there. So
I think that's
how big is fear in just not really wanting to know how bad off I may be?
Yeah. Well, and yes, absolutely. Not only how bad off might I be, but also that unknown seems daunting, right? Like all of these moving pieces that you might or might not know about, it feels daunting when you don't know what you should do to plan. It feels like there's a lot of stuff there that's, hard to process and hard to manage. But I feel like if you have the information, then you can make the decisions, right? So even and Teddy and I talked the other day, and we were talking about, every step forward is positive progress, right? So even if you just do a couple of things to prepare, it's better than doing nothing at all. So it is daunting, and there's definitely fear around the unknown.
Yeah. I started doing some planning, Randy. So I went ahead and canceled my keg of the week order. I don't have that subscription anymore.
Since when?
Keg of the week, man. I got the keg of the month still coming, not the week. Hey, you want to get Joel's question?
Yeah, he says, how do you help someone who's most all of their time and effort has been in their job and career, and then retirement is staring them in the face? So I'm guessing, meaning, hey, I've buried my head and I don't know that I have enough money, and oh no, what am I going to do now? That I don't have a whole lot of years left to earn a lot of money.
Yeah,
I think the question?
That's a great question. The number one thing is to speak with someone, a financial planner, that can help you get all of your assets and your income expenses in order, and can help you create a plan, because it's never too late to start. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's what one of my, I was going to tell a Johnny Carson joke, but I'll save the humor to the real comedians. But I did have a financial planner. When I told him I'd been through a fair amount of financial, self-induced financial challenge. And I said to him, Tom, I don't have much money that I can put away at the moment. I just don't. And he said, Randy, anything is better than nothing. And it's a first step. And then as my finances began to recover, then I was able to, up that but I remember that was something that he said that really encouraged me, and versus saying, hey, you're a failure, you only can throw this amount of money in when Teddy Burris can put 10 times the amount in. But it was an encouragement, and I'm glad I did, and I'm glad he encouraged me. It was a long time ago, but I'm glad that worked out the way it did. Really am.
Yeah, I don't put
And
any more money.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, in every step forward,
Yeah,
builds that confidence and that courage to keep building, just like you did, Randy.
Hey, let me get to Michael's question. Hang on to that for a minute. And I'll throw out my joke. Randy, I don't put any more money aside. The banks can't take any more my money. They got no place to put it. So let's go to another question, Vaishali. So, we're planning this, at least in our mind. In our mind, we're planning this retirement thing. Should we just tell our wife what we're going to do? Or maybe we talk about it? And I'm being a little facetious to cue up this question. How do we get prepared with our spouse in this journey?
Absolutely. Those conversations are so important. Just making sure that you're on the same page. Think about retirement, like so many things are going to change. And like you said, it's a phase of life. It's not like a, stopping point.
Yeah.
But, decisions like, is one spouse going to work part-time? Do they want to volunteer? Does one spouse want to be closer to the grandkids? Are we selling the house and moving? Are we staying in the same house? Like, how are we going to manage our finances? Will our lifestyle change? Are we going to reduce our standard of living? Are we, going to try and do more projects? Maybe you want to fix up the backyard because you have more time to enjoy that space, have coffee out there in the mornings, that kind of thing. So, there's so many things, and people have different visions, right? We're talking about establishing that vision. So definitely important to have those conversations. I read a statistic recently that was a little disturbing, that according to Dr. Susan Brown, 25% of divorces now involve those over 50. So, I think there's a real need to have these conversations. And if it requires bringing in a therapist, couples counselor to help you work through some of those conversations and decisions, that could be really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just talked to a buddy of mine just the other day who's 63, or same age as I am, 63 years old, and just got divorced because she and he are not aligned. He wants to keep growing his career. He went off and got a master's in his space. And she's like, dude, I'm done, man. It's time for me to go play. And there was no alignment in their goals.
Right.
Huge, so.
And a divorce at that age can be very difficult financially as well, because now you're splitting assets, to meet two household needs. Yeah.
I told my wife she can't leave. I don't care what.
That's right.
chain to the dining room table, right?
Randy.
I went through a divorce at 50, 51, 52, somewhere in there. And so, still paying alimony. So, was that song? Never mind. Anyway, there are a few songs that come to mind. Yeah. So, finances have been an interesting journey here. So, I got to ask, I guess, a broad kind of question here, and it's kind of tie this back into the work life and not necessarily just financial, but as we see on the horizon that, okay, I'm not going to live forever. I'm not going to necessarily be in my current job forever. What are some things, tips, questions that you raise about the kind of work that somebody might look to do when they're not trying to climb the ladder? A good example might be volunteering somewhere, that kind of a thing. But if they wanted to make some money, are there certain types of work that you've seen your clients kind of grab onto to keep them mentally in the work game, but not so stressed out back when they were younger and trying to make the bucks? Are there certain types of jobs that you've seen that maybe kind of fall into that category that somebody watching might say, hey, you know what? I could see myself doing that.
Yeah. You mean income producing jobs?
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a huge, it doesn't have to be a huge job, but just something that seems to be fulfilling, maybe certain industries, certain types of work. I mean, the old Walmart greeter, I don't mean that necessarily, but something that you could do in that next phase that still gives you that value of work.
Yeah.
Right.
The mental value of work.
Yeah. Actually see from Dean in the chat, becoming a teacher. That's a great suggestion, because any career, anything that you do can be taught. So I love that. Also, taking the skills that you have and applying them on a contract basis, right? Like offering that as a service. So if you're, you're an accountant, you can, prepare some tax returns, or do that on just a limited basis. You could tutor, right? Or turn your hobby into something. If you enjoy photography, maybe there's a way to sell your business, join a local photography club and sell your photos. Yeah, there's lots of different things that
I actually went and experimented with retail. I've never had a retail job, but in the middle of this year, back in May and June, I actually went as an experiment for what it would look like when I do get to the retirement. I took a job at Lowe's Home Improvement, part-time job. I worked a couple afternoons and one day a week on the weekend, and I absolutely loved it. I love the human engagement, helping people find answers and get the stuff they need to get. What I didn't like was all the other stuff associated with it. Like, they wanted me to work way more hours than I wanted to work. They wanted me to stock shelves. They wanted me to sweep floors. And I'm like, nah, that's not what I really want to do. I just want to do the human engagement part. But my point is, this is the planning phase. Vaishali, you and I talked about it. I'm in this planning phase, and I'm like, I got to go try some ideas out, and I'm going to try one or two other ideas, because I'm not quitting. And it's not like that I want the money. If I'm giving value, I expect to get something out of that, unless I'm doing it purely for a mission. So yeah, you got to experiment.
So I had a friend who decided to drive for DoorDash after retirement, and did that for a month or so, and enjoyed that new experience, and then decided after a month wasn't for him and moved on to something else. But I think that the key is really to determine what need it is you're trying to fill. Like you said, Teddy, you wanted the socialization, you wanted to be out there meeting people, so then that would require a certain type of job. If you want to, further your, with the photography, if you just really enjoy that and want to spend more time doing that, then perhaps selling your photography is a way to make a little extra money. If you just want a new experience, like, door dashing, then, then that. So I think the key is really to determine like what need, not financial, but like what non-financial need are you trying to fill, and then you can figure out what type of role.
Absolutely. So all right, so here's let's go back to the number part, because the number is important. It may not be the most important, but it is important, because we've got to survive, and survival for Randy and I is different. Survival for Randy and I is, Randy just needs the man cave to be properly stacked with or stocked with the right beverages and snacks. Survival for me is, I need all the Bentleys polished. I need them full of gas. I need my humidor freshly stocked, and then I need a brand new, six-stall of beer every week. All of us are different. So survival financially is going to be different for all of us.
Yeah.
How do we figure out what that number is, Vaishali?
Exactly. So that's an art and a science, right? Because it is different for everybody. And I think that's exactly why it's so important to start from an early age and start planning for that number. So there's a number of different ways. So for example, a lot of 401k administrating companies like Fidelity, for example, if your 401k is with Fidelity, they have planning calculators, and they have like guidelines, mileposts, right? So just general, and this is not one size fits all, but these are mileposts you can kind of look at. So for example, Fidelity says at the age of 30, you should have one times your annual income in savings. So if you're making at age 30, $40,000 a year, you should have $40,000 in savings towards retirement. And then
before you go further, Randy,
Yeah.
based on this job you and I are doing right now, do you have enough money put aside to be 1 times what we're paying you?
Well, that's
What's
at
that
the age
penny
of
you held
30.
up a little while ago, Teddy? I can double that. I have 2 pennies here somewhere.
I'm sorry, Vaishali.
I don't know, somewhere.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I get you. 30 at
Right.
30.
At 30.
Have your salary set aside.
Right. And then
Yeah.
at the age of 50, have 6 times your salary set aside, for example. And so, as you get older, you're saving more. Now it's interesting because hopefully your salary is increasing also, right? So you kind of have 2 different data points that are changing over time. So, but that's a very general, right? So that's why it's important to visit your financial plan on a regular basis and make sure that given the lifestyle you're aiming for, that you're saving enough over time. So yeah.
I get that. It really, again, this all comes back to planning and research and conversations with people. There's another piece of that, that retirement revenue that's important to think about as well. And that is, maybe you have a 401k, maybe you got a bunch of IRAs out there, maybe you got a bunch of annuities, maybe you got enough in Social Security, but maybe you're going to have some residual revenue coming in from other, activities. Maybe you've got rental property. Maybe you like me, you got a bunch of online content that makes me millions of dollars a day in my head. So it's not just the Social Security and the retirement money. It's what other revenue will you have come in that you can, what's the word? I was going to use the phrase bank on or feel comfortable that would be consistent. Thoughts?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, all of that comes into account. And, in addition to your retirement savings, you might have taxable investments or, other assets outside of that. All of that is part of it. And I will also say, to your point about the number, another decision point to make is, do you plan to use up these assets during your retirement, or do you want to leave an inheritance to beneficiaries or to a charitable cause, or, so that also affects that number, what your number is.
And if the answer is no, you're not leaving anything behind, you don't tell the daughters that.
Not hardly. Hey, and this is if you got a crystal ball, do you have I know Teddy's got a crystal ball. I don't. I used to have a snowman ball that you could shake and it would have all these little snow flakes that float. Crystal ball, Social Security, it's been around forever. And, I don't know how long it'll stay around and how it'll be funded, but for most people who want to do more than just eat cat food and, kind of bread and water thing, how solvent that was one of Dean's questions, was the whole Social Security. Is that going to be sufficient for most folks by the time they retire?
That's a tough question. And there's so many moving pieces, right? I mean,
yeah,
legislation can change at any time, taxation, et cetera. So I wish I had a crystal ball because I would say for most people, I would not bank on Social Security as a large part of my retirement. Like I really would try to have a retirement plan that doesn't involve Social Security, or maybe takes into account, a fraction of it, a part of it. But I can't comment on the solvency per se, but I would say I would not depend on Social Security as the main source of my.
I'm with you, Vaishali.
I'm thinking drug dealing might be my next career, but my parole officer has said that I should look for a different line of work. So
we've talked about this, buddy. We've talked about it. It's not the way to go. Professional embezzling is the way to go. Your hands stay clean. Hey, it's
money laundering. Money laundering, that it stays clean because it's laundering. So I'm with you, Teddy.
Don't give away all the cues. Don't give it all away.
I am with you all the way, my friend.
Hey, it's 12:30. You're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy, and we just went into the deep side of Randy and Teddy's mind. Our special guest today is Vaishali Shah. The conversation is preparing to exit that world of work, conversations around planning and we'll talk a little bit about execution, and we'll talk a little bit about finances, and how can you make the most of that journey to something new. So, Vaishali, thanks for being on here. Randy, Dean's throwing out some ideas, but we don't call them crimes, buddy. We just don't call them crimes. So,
yeah, I had something I wanted to throw in here at some point, so might as well do it now. And I mentioned this some weeks back on another show that we did, and it was about the idea behind creating margins in our lives. And it was I watched a preacher was a video talking about creating margins so that we're not living on the edge, whether it's time. How many times have you been late for work and you're speeding and you get behind somebody who's going 10 miles over the speed limit and you're riding their bumper, right? So, and accidents happen, stress happens. The same thing with money. So whether it's time, it's money, it's your health. I know you counsel folks about the finances and those next journey, but that whole thing about creating margins, and I've come to appreciate that more as I've gotten older, and I really do try to create all of those: time, money, health, so that I'm not, oh no, what's going to happen tomorrow kind of thing. It's really relieved a lot of stress. And I think to the degree that we can plan, right, and see that we have those margins, I think that helps us think more proactively versus reactively. Oh crap, what am I going to do tomorrow? Or, oh no, I just lost my job. Or, oh no, I'm late. How important do you see margins, and what do you do to try to instill those with the folks that you work with?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I would say, so I will also say that I like to say that, we have these limited resources, right? Time, energy, and money, right? These are things that we can put towards building what we're building. And in terms of margins, I think it's just so important to have a clear picture of what you have, your assets, your liabilities, your cash flow. If you have that clear picture, then you can create those margins, right? So the data first, and then use that data to make the choices that you need to make to create those margins, because you're exactly right. I mean, and that's part of where like the emergency fund comes into play, right? Having enough cash saved for 6 months to a year's worth of expenses, just in case. That's a margin. And not only is that cash fund available for emergency expenses, but if you're saving enough on a regular basis, that cash fund can be used to take advantage of opportunities that come up. If you have an opportunity to start a new business or buy a rental property, or do something else that you enjoy doing, that can be available for that. So yeah, no, having those margins can be positively proactive and also a good defensive strategy.
Don says, consider this. It's not about the planning, it's about the preparation. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think they go hand in hand for sure. Yeah.
All right, so let me ask you this. I know I said I wouldn't look at the Q&A.
I know.
But I'm OCD, and when that little red thing with the one popped up, I had to look. So
and Doug is pushing you. He is pushing you to make you look at it, man.
And now I forgot what the question was, but I'm going to make it up. The question was, what's the thought process behind whether you decide to take Social Security at age 65 or whatever, or 67 or 70, and how much does it grow? How does that factor into that whole formula about when I say, okay, I'm going to start drawing my Social Security?
Yeah. And I would say that, that's an important part of that financial planning piece, that, when you work with your financial planner and you're putting your plan together, that's an important part of that piece. And understanding what your options are well before retirement, at least in your 50s, as you approach that age, is really important. So yeah, you can start taking Social Security early at the age of 62, or you can delay it until the age of 70. And depending on, again, that vision that you're creating, the conversations you're having with your spouse, all of those will factor into when you want to take Social Security and when your spouse wants to take it. So yeah, very important to understand your options. Yeah, and visit that on a regular basis every few years as you're making your plan.
Yeah.
I would say it's different. It's different for everybody, right? Because, you know, are you a single person who's drawing your own Social Security? Are you in a married couple where you can strategize? Like, you know, will one spouse take Social Security early, drawing on the other spouse's employment history? Or, you know, there's so many different options. So
I'll offer that, because and we've talked about this. I'm in this planning phase. I'm, you know, I'm the next 3 or 4 years, I'm going to make a shift in what I'm doing. So I'm starting to plan now. And what's intriguing to me is you go to the socialsecurity.gov, SSA.gov, you can see what your Social Security looks like. You can see what it looks like if you take it at 62 and a half or 63 or 65 or 70, whatever. So you're not just guessing. You give you, I'm hoping it's a pretty decent estimate of earnings. And so again, part of that planning, as Vaishali said before, is get the data, get the information in front of you. So
exactly right.
Randy, do you want to
revisit that data? Revisit that data on a regular basis.
Yeah, and your health would have something to do with it too. If your family's history is a long life, then maybe that's different from a short life. And so you may, because you can't take it with you, right? If I die and I'm married, does my spouse get my Social Security? I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Let's say I die at age 68.
There's and all the rules are kind of complicated, but yes, there's a survivor benefit.
Yeah, there can be. I know my mom passed away in her 50s, and I've already outlived her. So like, well, hey, there was a question, and I don't want to get too into, there's a whole lot of financial things. And
we'll go with the lifestyle question. I like that one, Randy.
Which one was that one, Teddy? You have to take it.
So Vaishali, do you see some changing going on in retirement lifestyles? Have you noticed anything like that?
Yes, I love how active people are in their retirements. I mean, it's this time to just do what you love to do. Like my friend who decided to become a DoorDash driver just because that's a fun, exciting, different thing to do. Lots of volunteerism, activism. So I think that I'm noticing that there's a lot of just active retirements. So
and I'm going to respond to some of the, we're getting questions about, really tactical reverse mortgages, annuities, estate planning, and we want to be really careful not to go down that space. So I apologize to those who are asking those questions. We really want to be careful because everybody is a little bit different. And so, but Dean, if you're going to do estate planning, please don't forget to spell my last name properly. And Mike, investments, don't invest in anything except for me. Just, you got my PayPal account, send me money. I promise you a return.
Eddie, can I make a comment on, we were talking about having the conversations. I'd like to throw something in regarding that, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So, we were talking about having conversations with your spouse. Another important conversation to have, in regards to estate planning and those kinds of things is having conversations with the people that you appoint to be your decision makers. There's so many. So if who you name to be your executor in your estate, have conversations with them ahead of time to let them know that you're making this decision and what this role would involve. Healthcare and financial powers of attorney. If you're naming your children to make these decisions for you in case you're not able to, let them know that you're expecting this responsibility of them. And then probably even more important, as you think about health, your long-term care, right? And your care needs as you age, are you expecting your children to be involved in your elder care? Are you are you going to move in with them, or are you expecting them to manage the process of that care? Like, just having these conversations with the people that will be making these decisions for you, so that they're aware. It's amazing, the number of adult children who don't realize that they'll be playing these roles.
All four of my daughters know that every
Mhm.
piece of property they buy from this point forward, I have to approve because it has to have a space for me.
There you go. There you go.
All right, let's talk about the countdown.
And room for the kegerator too. So
And
yeah.
that's a given, yeah. The countdown to retirement, Vaishali. Talk a little bit about that and milestones and stages for that countdown.
Yeah. So the countdown starts when you get your first adult job, right? Because of the benefits that you want to make sure you're taking advantage of, particularly the match. The number of people that I know who are not taking advantage of their employer match 401k and health savings account. A lot of employers will match your contributions to your health savings account. So if you're not taking advantage of that, you're leaving free money on the table, and that money will grow over decades. So that's a large step towards a secure retirement. Also, if you start saving early, then when you get closer, as you go through the years, and you're monitoring those savings, it's possible that you won't have to save as much later, right? So you can enjoy that income. So that's number one. That countdown starts at the very beginning. I would say check that trajectory. I like for people to check that trajectory every year, as they, check on that financial plan every year, but at least every 2 years. And definitely at life events. If you're going through, having children or a divorce or, change in career, you've lost your job, it's important to check on that plan and make adjustments. As you get older, like closer to, let's say, your 50s, and really, I mean, these milestones kind of depend on when you expect to retire, right? Because if you expect to retire in your 50s, then some of this has to happen a little bit earlier. But long-term care is a really important piece of this puzzle, knowing if you can fund long-term care needs with the assets you have, or do you need to obtain long-term care insurance? So in your 50s is a good time to get that fairly well solidified. Also looking into Social Security and your options there. Estate planning is really important. So, I mean, gosh, estate planning is important from the time that you have a dependent, like you should have an estate plan. So, I mean, this is not just about exiting the world of work, but as you get closer, you want to make sure that your estate plan reflects, your desires, and you've talked to your decision makers. Let's see. Making sure that you're taking advantage. If you reach advanced age after age 50, for example, and you want to start making catch-up contributions to your retirement accounts, that's an important consideration. Oh, and paying off debt. So, so I personally feel that it is liberating to enter that phase of your life without any debt. I feel it's liberating. So definitely want to make a plan to pay off any credit card debt well ahead of time. The mortgage is typically a lower interest rate, so maybe you could keep the mortgage, but honestly, if you don't have any debt, you just have a lot more flexibility. So I think that's a
quick question for you. It deals with scams. It was one of the questions somebody threw in there, and when we want something, which is security, financial security, good health, so we have desires, and there are people out there who will prey on those desires, PREY. And so what are some common scams that you see out there, and things that maybe seem too good to be true or just don't seem to add up?
Scams that are too good to be true.
I don't know, just,
Yeah.
I mean, people,
so
Bernie
actually
Madoff comes to mind. All right. But, aside from that.
Right. Well, actually scams that are very common that come to mind, the phone calls that you get, or the texts or whatever that say, I'm calling from the IRS. And if you need to call us back because, you've got this, audit or whatever, and you owe a lot of money, and, all the consequences that could come with that. Anytime that you are being asked personal information like social security numbers or, bank account information or whatever from a stranger by text or by phone, it is likely a scam. So yeah, stay away from it for sure.
Hey, Don just threw out a really good question. And I want to share my perspective when they answer that. What do you do when all the news is bad and you do your research, you do your planning, and it looks hopeless? I read a book from Dale Carnegie wrote titled How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And Don, I would wager you know what that book is. And at least I know you know who Dale Carnegie is. But that book really changed my perspective on worrying about hopeless situations. I mean, I get it. It's, often for a lot of us in different ways, it's not going to look pretty. It's not going to be a bed of roses, whatever the challenge is or our next step is or retirement. But it doesn't have to be hopeless if you're willing to get into a conversation with someone about ideas that you haven't thought of and look at, making adjustments and changing and maybe doing something different, even at an older age. I mean, it doesn't have to be hopeless, but the only way I think to get past hopeless, and I'm going to lean back on Vaishali in a minute for her thoughts on this, is be willing to talk with people about ideas and opportunities you have not thought of yet. Vaishali, another perspective on that?
Yeah, well, I think that's the power of having the data too, right? Like the fear of the unknown is powerful, but if you can fill in that unknown, right, then it's less scary. So yeah, no matter what age, it doesn't matter. Get a good sense of the numbers that you're working with, how those numbers will change, check on it. So
yeah. A little bit of humor in this statement, but it's real. We have my wife and I have 4 daughters, and I jokingly say I have to approve every home they buy to make sure it has a space for me. But really, in 12 years ago, when I quit corporate America and started my business, I actually took one of Dale Carnegie's philosophies, and that philosophy is accept that the worst possible thing could happen, and then do everything in your power not to let it happen. But I had to have a safety net. And my safety net was, I went to my 4 daughters and said, if I fail at this, is there something you could do to help me? And basically I said, you have a place for your mom and I to live. So I don't think it always has to be hopeless, but I think it does start with a good conversation. So
I also think it's important to consider how likely that worst case scenario is to happen, right? Like, so when I went through my divorce, I remember I was scared. I was a stay-at-home mom at the time, and I remember talking to my brother, and he said, "Well, what's the worst thing that can happen?" And I said, "Well, I might live in my car. Like I might not be able to, afford a house or whatever." And then he was like, "Well, how likely is that to happen? Like what are the things that, you can move in with a friend, or, of course I can move in with him. Like, so how likely is that worst case scenario to happen?"
That's important. Now, did your brother actually say you could move in with him, or did you assume that?
Oh, no, he said that. And
Okay,
I was
just
glad.
checking. So good stuff. So it's never too late. I mean, this, leads us to another conversation. It's never too late. Whatever it is you're trying to do, whether it's create financial security to whatever degree you can create that, whether it's put together a plan to whatever degree and whatever envision you have. I think that's, we talked about this a little bit. It's just never too late. You just don't stop and go, I'm too old. What are your thoughts on this never too late statement, Vaishali?
I think that's exactly right. I think that every little step that you can take in the right direction pushes you that much forward, and creates that much more security. So like we've been talking about, no matter what age you are right now, it's time to get started, and it will be less scary when you start. So Absolutely.
You know, another thing I just realized too is that for all of us older goats, Randy, are you in that bucket with me? Or, look, I just call myself an old goat.
I'm going to speak into my good ear. I may hear you better next time.
You see what's going on with corporations today? LabCorp just increased their non-union labor rate to $15 an hour. I mean, you know, so my point is, you know, if you're looking for a revenue stream, albeit a lower revenue stream that can partner with your annuities, your IRAs, whatever that is you have set aside, we can now get as much as $15 an hour.
I started out making 10 grand a year out of college.
Yeah.
Back in 10 grand a year.
So, Vaishali, this is good. This is good dialogue. Randy, anything else we got that you want to bring up, buddy?
Just that, Teddy, if this man cave thing doesn't work out, do you have room for me at your place?
Well, you saw what Dean asked me, buddy.
Wondering. Yeah.
Dean wants to bunk with you in my spare, guest house.
So Teddy, now your daughters have to run their houses by you. Make sure there's room for Randy as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right?
Vaishali, this is great. Wrap it up with a couple, just 2 or 3 points that you think are absolutely vital that we all need to never forget, please.
Okay. Well, I would say number 1, create that vision and just embrace it. Create a vision that you love, because it is possible to get there. Talk to your spouse too, like the combined vision. Start early and check often. So start your planning right now and check on a regular basis to make sure you're on track. And as that vision changes, make sure that your plan reflects that. I would say call on the experts in your field, right? So estate planners, financial planners, insurance professionals, therapists, call on those professionals and get the advice, because the knowledge is the power. Yeah. And finally, enjoy this journey and enjoy exiting the world of work and, find the adventure in it. It's a wonderful time.
Yeah. When you say check often, it reminds me of a guy that I knew years ago that every time he turned his computer on, his Barney Stanley, whatever that company is, web page would come up with his finances and list all of his finances. And it had these, KPI metrics of, green and yellow and red. And so every time he turned his computer on, he would see what was going on with his portfolio. And I'm like, I think that's checking a little bit too often.
There is such a thing. Yes, absolutely.
So, Vaishali, thank you very much for coming on. This has been a real pleasure and lots of ideas that we can use. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, thank you.
Randy, do you have a story, buddy?
I have I had to think of it. I always say, I don't know, I'll make one up. I
challenged you at the first part of the show to come up with a story that nobody's ever heard.
I'm going to tie this into job hunting just to show that I was actually listening. You talked about the 3 things: the vision, the planning. Okay. Have the vision, seek out professionals, and also enjoy the journey. The end game is going to get there, but enjoy the journey. So I'm going to take all those 3 things and tie them into a job search. And I deal with professionals going through a job hunt. And the fear, the trepidation, the uncertainty. Oh no, hadn't had to look for a job in years. What's this LinkedIn thing? I've never needed that. That's a mountain I need to climb. Oh no, I haven't put a resume together in 25 years. It goes on. And so they don't really have that vision, the steps to take to get to where they need to go. And so professionals, somebody like me, somebody like Teddy, who's been down this path, both as a job hunter and also to help coach others throughout the process, to take the time to seek people out versus the fear, that concern, the injured pride, and sitting at home, pounding out applications on the internet. All that's going to do is age you another day at a time. And you just is not really all that productive. So that's a thought. And then enjoy the journey. And a boss of mine years ago was a sales manager, operations manager, and he used to talk about the difference between selling a contract that was small in dollar amount versus putting your eggs in the one big sale.
Mhm.
And he made the same amount of residual or the same amount of commission on the contract regardless. But I asked him, I said, Ken, I said, why do you tie up so much time with these itsy bitsy ones, these smaller contracts, versus why don't you go shoot some elephants, right? And just knock it out like that. And he said, well, he says, I could do that. Not only is there the risk of if these few elephants don't pan out, I'm stuck. But what he said was, I like to see the incremental progress. I like to see successes because it keeps me motivated and in the game. And so if I tie that back to what you talk about as far as seeing, hey, I'm on track, I'm not there yet, but I'm making progress. It's the same for job hunters too. Hey, I'm working my plan. I'm networking, I'm practicing my interview, I'm applying for work, I'm talking to people who do different things. I'm doing the things necessary to get to the end goal. I have a vision of the end goal, and I can take pride, enjoyment, happiness out of those incremental successful steps along the way. So Teddy, that is my story. That's a pretty darn good one, I think.
Good, man. I'm proud of you.
That'd be all right. All right.
Yes, absolutely.
Where's
Hey,
where's my raise, man? Where's my raise? You get a little extra.
Check
in
the
old
envelope at the end of the week. Check the
do
envelope.
re mi for me. All right.
Hey, I'll tell you a failure that I've made. I've made a lot of failures in life. Besides working for two companies and went totally bankrupt and took away my 401ks that I had no control over, but that happened. Probably one of my biggest financial failures was one of the simplest things that I could have done. And Vaishali will probably agree with me. In 1977, State Farm came to me because they were insuring my car and they had me sign up for a whole life policy. It would have costed me $10 a week. And I said, no, man, I ain't doing that. $10 a week, State Farm in 1977. I don't even want to do the math on what that would be worth today. Because that would have been phenomenal. But I was brand new at my job and I failed. Here's my other story. Enjoy the journey. You're not retiring to stop doing something. You're retiring to start doing something. Change your mindset about retirement. Maybe you can't go buy a Lear jet and travel the world like Randy and I are going to do in my mind. But what you can do is the best you can do at having fun with what you have. So look at it as a journey to do something new, something different, something better. Please do yourself a favor and don't think of Barcaliners or rockers on the front porch. It's not what you want to do. So Vaishali, again, thank you very much for showing up today. Really appreciate it. I'll give everybody access to Vaishali through the YouTube video. You can find her website. You can find her on LinkedIn or company page, Facebook business page, and she's on Twitter. If you have questions, you want to have a conversation about this planning so you can start preparing, reach out to Vaishali and have a conversation. Randy, buddy, good seeing you again.
Yeah, next week our guests will be Amy Lytle and Renee Rohr. Is it Rohr? R-O-H-R-E-R.
Rohr,
so
yes.
Yeah, and so the topic, and it's kind of right up in my wheelhouse here, is transitioning to a career in nonprofit.
Yeah.
And I did that about 8-9 years ago, maybe 10. So we'll talk about maybe some of the steps and some of the questions you need to think about if you're thinking, hey, that's the next step in my game here. And we'll cover that with Amy and Renee next week. 11:55 a.m. Eastern time is the green room time. We go live and recording at 12 noon. And as always, if you have ideas for topics or maybe guests, friend of yours, people you've done business with, you think might add value to our audience, then reach out to Teddy or me and we'll have a chat with them.
Cool.
There
All
you
right,
go.
good. Thanks for reminding me about the show next week, buddy. Vaishali, we'll talk another day. Everybody, take care. Be healthy.
Tina.
Bye. Thank you.